Hello and welcome to the Managing Madrid Podcast! What a pleasure. We are here live in Dallas for the second time in Managing Madrid Podcast history. And it's so nice to see some familiar faces, meet some new faces, meet patrons, listeners on the podcast. We've read their names and finally putting names to their faces today. It's a pleasure. I'm your host, Kiyan Sobhani, joined by the great Matt Wiltse. Matt, how are you?
Kiyan, I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here. Awesome to be in Dallas, see all these wonderful faces. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
So, yesterday was a little bit historic for Matt and I because it was the first time we attended a game together as press. So we sat press row. We had a tactical view of the game. So it was nice. We, how much we like to analyze as nerds. So we got a great view of that, and we just kind of like bounced things off of each other during the game. And we were trying to figure out are we overreacting? What's fair to take away from this game? I know there's mixed reactions in this room. Obviously because of the nature of our job, we see a lot of different perspectives, let's say. We see the extreme narratives of all right, we hit the post 5 times, we had 28 shots, we didn't score a goal, we need Mbappe. That's one perspective, right? The other perspective is it's preseason, we hit the post 5 times, we had 28 shots, let's not overreact. Any other day, maybe we win that game. Vinicius' penalty goes right on the underside of the bar. Nevertheless, the narrative writes itself, and I did not check the Spanish press today, but I assume it's 2 things. We need Mbappe, and number 2 is Vinicius can't take penalties anymore. So, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, Matt, because this is kind of the first time Matt and I are actually talking about it on a deeper level about what happened last night and what it means for next season and beyond. And I'm just curious, Matt, because some people actually got mad at us last night for being positive. That we're paid by the club. Maybe we need to be more critical. But we did put out a video last night on Instagram just expressing our immediate thoughts on the game and that maybe, it wasn't so bad. Matt, morning after, el día después, do you feel any differently?
Yeah, obviously another day to digest things. I went back this morning, watched the highlights, because sometimes when you're watching it live, you miss some things that maybe you didn't see on the TV with replays and so on and so forth. Watched the highlights, and I'm honestly still coming away with the same feeling. I felt like the team, especially for large parts of this game, played really well. Any other day, they're winning that game, and honestly, that could have been a 5-3 scoreline to Real Madrid, just given the amount of opportunities, given the amount of chances. I think the first 20 minutes or so, Barcelona dominated. And we forget Aurelien hit the crossbar with a brilliant volley. And then Real Madrid gradually grew into the game. I think you saw a lot of those late arriving runs from Jude Bellingham in the number 10 role. And I honestly, we were talking during the game in the press box, we were like, what has Fede done? And I was like, oh, don't forget, he had that brilliant first-time pass into Jude where you argued Jude probably could have taken a shot earlier. And then I went back and looked, and he could have had 4 assists in the first half. He was the one that crossed the ball that earned the penalty kick. He obviously had that first-time pass we talked about into Jude. He is the one that played Rodrigo when that cross that went to the near post, and Ter Stegen made a good save. And there was one other he had in the first half, and I was thinking to myself, man, we just had so many opportunities and chances that you just forgot about because it was time and time again, and it was such a high-octane match that I came away feeling good. I still think we want to talk about the diamond, and I think there's some skepticism and concerns there, but for the most part, I felt like there were more positives than negatives in this one.
Well, let's do a quick survey of the audience. The 2 formations that are being discussed, one is the diamond, the other one is 4-3-3. Show of hands, how many of you guys prefer the diamond?
Wow.
Oh, hold on, let's send this to Carlo Ancelotti. So 4-3-3, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Wow, okay.
Is there anyone in here who's thinking something completely different other than those 2? What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Three-
A little bit.
Let me guess. 3 at the back.
Too risky. Something closer to rather than diving just a straight up 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Seeing how that plays out, but again, anything that's not the 4-3-3 goes off.
Yeah.
Right now, that's kind of the way.
Angelo.
Yeah, I think the 4-2-3-1. I'm just having some nice dreams of that double pivot of Tchouameni combination.
Yeah.
And Bellingham in front of them. I think that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, so I think it's interesting because before any of the preseason games started, when we signed Bellingham, what was immediately in my head was a diamond, because Bellingham is great in that role in particular, and we have so many midfielders to squeeze in the lineup, right? There are so many players who need playing time, and you're trying to figure out how to squeeze in all these midfielders. Everyone's thinking, like, who plays? We only have 3-4 spots in midfield. Thank you so much. And then poor Ceballos, who's like 8th choice, also was there. Like, and then you got Arda Güler, if he recovers hopefully soon by mid-season. You got players like him. But I think now that we've seen it for 3 games, and obviously it's just preseason, so we don't know how much it actually means. My initial takeaways, and I'm curious to know what you think, is that I feel like maybe I was a little bit wrong about it, because I'm mostly concerned about Vinicius in this role. I think it gets the best out of Bellingham, but it sacrifices Vinicius to a large degree. And I think out of all 3 games, this is the game I noticed it the most. Granted, he could have scored twice last night, and maybe the narrative would have been a little bit different. But I'm just looking at not the scoreline and the results, but just what he had to do last night. There was a lot of situations where he's receiving the ball with his back to goal, like he's like Ruud van Nistelrooy or something, and he's playing so centrally. He's expected to be a hold-up striker. Whereas, like, we know what makes Vinicius different, like unique and special. He gets the ball on the left wing and he cuts in and he cooks. And we didn't get to see that as much. There were definitely moments, but so that's, I feel like now, and it has less to do with Benzema, because at first I was thinking, maybe because Benzema's gone, we have to play this way. But I think now that I reflect on it, I think it had less to do with Benzema leaving and more about fitting in Bellingham and the midfielders. Because if Benzema was still here, my hunch, and I can't prove it, I think Carlo still would have put Bellingham in a diamond, because it's his way of fitting in Bellingham with the other midfielders. What were your observations of the diamond so far?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from this perspective. So Vinicius has become our franchise player. He's the player. He's the best player in the team. He's one of the best left wingers in the world, arguably the best left winger in the world. And you're taking him from that position and moving him more centrally, playing with his back to goal, as Kiyan mentioned. So in essence, I feel like Carlo Ancelotti's saying, I'm looking to maximize Bellingham's attributes, and I'm willing to mitigate Vinicius. And I don't know if that's the right payoff. I don't know if that's the right gamble in this situation. And so I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a switch back to a 4-3-3. Watching from the press box last night and kind of getting to see what I like about watching the game live rather than just getting the camera angle is you can watch a lot of different stuff off ball, and you can see where players are taking up their positions and stuff like that. And so what I kept noticing was Rodrigo and Vinicius would oftentimes drop deep. They want to associate with different players. They want to get on the ball. They don't want to be that central focal point and kind of be disciplined and hold their position. And so when that happens, we have no focal point. We have no one to play the ball. When we get into the final third, there are so few players getting into the box, and that's when you rely on that Jude Bellingham late arriving run. But what if he can't get there? And if he's the only one, you need more options in the box. And so that's where I get concerned is these guys, they're not pure strikers. They're 2 wingers playing up top. And I think that's where we're running into issues, and I think it's becoming more apparent that we need a central focal point up there.
Well, it's funny because, like, before all of this started, Carlo said, yeah, if this doesn't work, we'll just go back to the old system. And I wonder how fast we'll get there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, I don't know. And I don't know how much to read from this game in particular, because you were there. I asked Carlo last night, like, scoreline aside, what did you think that was positive from the game? And he thought we played really well. So it's what we think is obviously always going to be different from what Carlo actually feels and the way he reads and analyzes everything. But I do wonder how long. Of course, if we get the guy, the guy we don't speak of, this conversation in some ways becomes irrelevant. But I don't know if it does even then, actually, because.
Well, here's my question to you though, and to the audience is, like, nobody voted for the diamond, but we still had 27 shots last night. We created a ton of opportunities. Vinicius himself hit the crossbar 3 times? Like, it's still really effective. Like, all in all, it was effective. Like, we can't say it didn't work at all. So that's where I start to question myself even and saying, like, I don't know that Carlo Ancelotti is going to be that quick to shift from this, because we did create quite a bit, even though there are obvious flaws still. But it's only been 2 or 3 games. So that's where I start to, like, even play a devil's advocate with myself on, does this work?
Well, it worked against Milan. It worked against Manchester United. I don't, like, the thing is, this is a really weird question, I know, and it seems silly to ask, but did it work against Barca, apart from the score? Apart from the ball being like 1 millimeter away from going in the back of the net 5 times, did it work? Everyone's like, yeah.
I think what's holding everyone back is that it just feels like Vinicius isn't playing to the best of his abilities, and even though he still, like, did so much and managed to pull these shots off, it still feels like there's more. And I know, Rodrigo, you wanted to mention something?
Yeah, I think the way it works and what started happening a little bit in the second half is if we have sustained possession or counterattacks, Vinicius does go left, and it turns kind of into a 4-3-3, where Fede takes off the right wing. That way you still have those 2 center mids holding it back just in case. Bellingham's still in that spot at the number 10, and now Vini gets on the left side, which is when he started pairing up the left side, right? Like, you're getting a little bit of you're getting cooked.
Yeah.
So you're getting that 4-3-3, but defensively, it's still attacking. So that's kind of what I'd like to see start to change. And maybe it's just Luke came in, and now he was holding up top. But that's what I would like to see with the diamond, if we stick with it. Not a standard diamond, because that putting Vini on top is kind of a waste.
Well, to your point, because sometimes, we think of formations as this rigid thing, when in reality it morphs from different formations within the game and from sequence to sequence. You can have this exact same lineup on the field, but you could ask Vinicius to stay more on the left side, which is ironic because so much of last season we said, get him away from the left. I think it's with him is that I don't mind him being fluid and going down the middle and going down the right side, but I think what was problematic yesterday to an extent was that he was receiving the ball with his back to goal, which I don't know if it's necessarily his game. But I think you can play with this same lineup on the field, but you could shift it to like a 4-2-3-1 with this exact same lineup and have Rodrigo as the false 9 and more Vinicius on the left. You could do that. So I also wanted to talk about, like, and I don't know, I don't think it's possible, but did we have XG for a preseason game? Do we have an XG for last night? So we only have shots. Okay. So if you look at what went wrong last night, would you say it was more offensive or defensive? Defensive? How many people would agree with that? Okay. Maybe a bit of both. It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? The first goal we conceded, and I didn't watch it until this morning. I didn't watch the replay last night. I was trying to figure out what happened because Carlo said we fell asleep there.
So Rodrigo and Vinny were marking the penalty kickers, and one was like the wall.
Yeah.
When the pass was passed to Pedri outside the box, which no one was covering for a bit.
Yeah.
They already start making strides going forward, and Pedri sees that these guys think behind them, passes the pass to Dembele, and Dembele just shot.
Yeah. So what I saw from that play, first of all, swallow my pride, I thought it was a genius pass from Pedri. Like, it was incredibly, it was a great pass. And it was a heads-up run from Dembele. And then you look at Vinicius and Rodrigo on that sequence, it's like they just don't have the defensive instincts. Maybe if it was like Camavinga and Fede Valverde in that situation, maybe they would have picked him up. But Vinicius and Rodrigo were already like, all right, counterattack mode. And Dembele snuck in, so that was the first mistake. The second goal was a Cruz giveaway. unfortunately. That was the second or third?
Third.
That was
second?
Second one.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
And then the third one, I'm not sure. At that point, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm out. Doesn't matter what happens from here on.
Carlos came out and
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Right. So, I actually, to some capacity, I do worry about our defense. But so when I'm looking at last night's game, it's hard to know what to analyze and what not to analyze. Because I do think in front of goal, we had some bad luck, and then we had some bad decisions on the defensive end. And then the margin of error, we just didn't have, we didn't give ourselves maybe enough of a cushion, and somehow we lost 3-0, which was a little bit deceptive, I think. But I think it raises a different question. If you're going to squeak by, let's say, if these games were real games and not exhibition games, we squeak by Milan and Manchester United, and then against a better team, the margin of error was less. How sustainable is this? How many times next season are we going to say, oh, well, if we didn't hit the post, if we scored this chance and that chance, we can't keep repeating that conversation for 30 games. Is this enough? That's the main question. Is this amount of firepower without Benzema enough? And in my opinion, I don't think we have enough in the tank to sustain it over the course of a season. I know Benzema had a decline year. Benzema's decline year was 32 goals, a month of Ramadan Kareem, which we're not going to get next season, 3 hat-tricks in 1 month during a pivotal stage against big teams. And I'm not saying Benzema would score a hat-trick every game next season, but there's a leadership component, there is a big game component to him, and maybe you don't have to play him every game next season. Again, this conversation changes if we get Mbappe. It does. But for now, as the squad is currently constructed, I'm not sure if we have enough in the tank, and I haven't actually spoken to you about that. So I'm curious to know what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, my thoughts go back to Jude Bellingham, because I think a lot is asked of him in that number 10 role. He covers a ton of ground, and I just don't know that's sustainable over a full season. I could see by February, January timeframe, 1, the diamond started to be scouted, and then 2, he just doesn't have enough in the tank to continue to make these types of runs and cover that much ground. So that's where I get concerned with the long-term sustainability of this. But some of these other, the set piece, I think hopefully Rodrigo and Vinicius learn from this. That's a great learning opportunity. Thank God it happened in preseason and they learned from it. If you actually watch the sequence, Camavinga as well got caught pushing forward.
I refuse to believe.
So yeah, so it was all 3 of them. It was Rodrigo, Vinicius, and Camavinga. You do start to think to yourself you would think a guy like Sergio Ramos would never let that happen. We need to make sure David Alaba, Rudiger, Militao, whoever's out there, Courtois, they're being vocal and screaming at Vinny and Rodrigo, making sure that they're watching the off-ball run. Because that's kind of 101 right there, whenever defending a set piece. And so, but that stuff I think is easy to fix. So your initial question was, do we think this is sustainable over the long term? I do have concerns regarding certain personnel and just what they're being asked to do right now. But in terms of the output and what we created, I'm happy with that. I was really happy, and I've been happy with what we created over the last 3 games. Is that enough over the course of a season? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it is fair to say you're losing a guy that brings 30 goals and you really haven't replaced it. Joselu maybe gets you 15, so that's half. Does Jude Bellingham get 10? I don't know. That's tough to say right now.
Well, you lost Asensio's goals too, which is an underrated part of it. And I don't, Asensio will give you 10, 15 goals, regardless of what you think of him. And even in the small games, because that's been a criticism of him, I thought he was actually good in big games last season. And also, even if it's only against small teams, those are the games that Real Madrid needs to be more consistent in anyway. You need goals in those games. So maybe Bellingham can replace that aspect of it. But the Benzema goals it's hard for me to see how that gets replaced. If Joselu scores, the thing is, I don't see Joselu being a starter. That's the thing. Whether he should start is a different question, but I don't think he's a starter in Ancelotti's system. Not every game anyway, because I don't see him benching Rodrigo. The other question, the follow-up question to that is, can Jude sustain all that load? I think he can, but I'm more curious to know how much of this formation change really is for Bellingham specifically. And that's why I asked Carlo a few games ago, how contingent is the diamond on him? And he said, well, Modric can play there. I thought Modric was a stretch, but he put Modric in that list. He said Goulet. Younger Modric, yes. And to be fair against Manchester United, Modric actually shifted in that 10 role, and I thought he did well. So it's not, but I don't know how much he's actually going to play that role. He mentioned Goulet, he mentioned Rodrigo and Brahim. If it's Rodrigo, then that probably means Joselu would start up top. But I actually do wonder, like, if Bellingham can't play for whatever reason, would he continue the diamond? I don't know if he would.
I mean, you have so many. I think the reason why, I mean, we've talked about it. So many midfielders. You want to fit Fede in. You want to be able to try and fit one of Kroos or Modric in. You want to get Camavinga. Now Tchouameni. We'll talk about Tchouameni. He's been incredible. He's making me eat my words. Like, he's been so good this preseason.
Oh, that's right. You're a Tchouameni hater.
No, hey, I've been nothing but praise for Tchouameni this preseason. Like, this is the guy I wanted. This is the guy I want to see, like, be impactful, have a chip on his shoulder, like, get stuck into challenges. There was that one moment last night where he, like, glided past a couple guys off the dribble coming out from the back. Like, that's exactly what we want from Tchouameni. I feel like he's giving, of anything, he's giving balance to that diamond. And really, I mean, the shot was unbelievable. Another one that somehow bounced off of back of Ter Stegen's head. So, no, Tchouameni, of anything, like this preseason bright spots, I think Tchouameni's probably been number one bright spot of the preseason.
He's been great. Christian, did you want to make a point?
Well, just asking a question. So if Kroos isn't going to play every game, who are we going to play out from the back three? In the diamond.
If Kroos is not on the field.
Right. Is it going to be Tchouameni? I don't know.
I think last night he proved he can do a decent job at it. Like, I was impressed, like the precision and pace he put on the passes. That one ball he slipped through to Mendy. I think last night he proved he can handle some of it. Now, is he a controller and a dictator of tempo like Kroos? No. And so that's where you are losing that. But I think when we play those four midfielders that we played, it's a completely different setup. And I think Ancelotti's going for that high octane, high press, high energy, more of a dynamic midfield, rather than controllers with Kroos and Modric. And so I think we just have to get used to, like, okay, if this is going to be the four young guys are going to play, then we got to know in our mind that it's going to be a different type of midfield than what we've been used to the last 10 years now, right? So,
well, I think also there are two different positions to me, because Kroos' best position, in my opinion, is the 8. And I think he can play the 6 in certain games, like, for example, if you go back to last year's Clasico, which we lost in the Bernabeu, the Copa del Rey one, the one where we dominated possession and we lost, we lose 1-0, right? Well, yeah, so he played the 6 in that game. I thought that worked because of the way we played. We're pressing high, we're keeping a high line. You're not asking him to track runners in the box. And whereas, like, for example, a different game, which was a disaster, City at the Etihad, it's like, you can't, this guy, Kroos, one of the greats, in my opinion, one of the top 5 CMs of all time, but use him properly. And I think it's unfair to him to ask him to cover that much ground defensively when you need him in a different role. So to me, there are two different positions. I think Tchouameni is perfect for that 6th position for us. Or, like, as you said, Angelo, earlier, like a double pivot, I think that works too. But I like to have Kroos on the field because I think he's complementary to the rest of the midfielders. Because between Kroos and then any combination of Fede, Tchouameni, Camavinga, Bellingham, even Dani Ceballos. Am I missing anyone? Luka Modric, obviously. I think he fits that skill set really well because he's like, he can play the quarterback, he's the ball progressor, he's press resistant. The other midfielders are all like high-flying two-way players. I think it works. So I would say Kroos or Modric on the field, one of them, but not together. So another way to answer your question, I think, is if it's not Kroos, I think you should have Modric on the field.
I'm thinking, like, so defensively that makes sense with Kroos, that he's not as good in the 6th role and Tchouameni's better. But I'm thinking offensively, like, who do we play? Who does whoever Militao play the ball to? Like,
right.
Who's his first pass?
Yeah, I think
it's been Kroos in possession.
Sure. Yeah. My answer to that would be Modric, but I think Camavinga's pretty capable.
Okay.
Tchouameni's capable. Like, again, like, I don't think Kroos is generational in that aspect, so I think no matter who it is, it's not going to be Kroos.
Yeah.
But But I think all of our midfielders are capable of receiving the ball in that situation.
Camavinga has some giveaways. I hate to tell you that.
No, the thing with Camavinga is that out. The thing with Camavinga is right, like we were, and I was. This is one thing I said, especially in his first season. I think he's improved on it now a little bit, but he needed to learn like when to accelerate and decelerate. And what I mean by that is that sometimes he would receive the ball in deep positions, and he would need to be a little bit safer, and he would try to dribble through, and he would lose the ball. And then other times where there's like 30 yards of space in front of him, he needs to carry the ball, and he slows it down and plays a safer ball. And I think he needed to learn how to calibrate in those situations, and I think he's improved on that a lot. But I think there were a couple of situations, even last night, where he could have made better decisions on the ball. So I think it's a learning curve. He needs to improve. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What did we not cover from last night?
Let me look at my notes real quick.
Well, I'll give a quick Tchouameni segment while you look at your notes. I thought he was fantastic last night. I thought he was definitely one of the bright spots. His press resistancy, like just the way he can shield the ball, he's hard to take the ball off of. He's so strong. But also, little shoulder drops, carrying the ball. His ball winning was great. Key moments where his slide tackles like just saved the day. I was really impressed with Tchouameni. Obviously, he can strike the ball from distance. We saw it at the World Cup. He hit the I don't know how that didn't go in. Crossbar and then hits Ter Stegen in the back of the head. Does that count as a save? I don't know. But Ter Stegen won man of the match. I think that's also telling, right? That we should include that. That's like, I don't know, like to me, some points of optimism in our analysis that the man of the match was Barcelona's goalkeeper. I thought Tchouameni was fantastic. Rodrigo.
Can you guys touch on Mendy versus Fran Garcia so far?
Listen, I'm amazed it took us this long.
Yeah.
27 minutes.
So I gave Mendy a 7 on the player ratings yesterday, and people were just, oh my god, they're like, what are you drinking? What are you smoking? How did you get Mendy? And so I mean, from my perspective, watching it live, I actually thought he played pretty well. Obviously, he had that one bad giveaway that led to the big save. Yeah, his injury and the big save from Courtois and Dembele. But other than that, like Kiyan told me in the first, I didn't even realize this. He had the most key passes before he came off. He had 4 key passes. And if you actually looked at some of his crosses, I think he was one that Jude just missed this much from, and it was actually a really good cross. He was getting into good wide positions. Like, he actually beat Dembele one-on-one in the attacking third. Like, I actually liked what I saw from him for the most part. So I wasn't upset with it. I saw it, like, afterwards. I guess maybe it was watching on TV, you saw it closer because he was furthest away from us. Like, people were just ripping Mendy apart. So, with Fran Garcia, I love the speed. I love just the natural physical abilities he has. I just feel like he's still playing a little nervy, and like sometimes the ball gets caught under his feet, or he plays balls behind, like the pass is a little behind the on-running player. And I just feel like there's these little technical things that are slightly off, where I'm not 100% there yet on trusting Fran Garcia. Like, I really like him, but I haven't seen, maybe it's just a confidence thing right now, and he's nervy playing for Real Madrid for the first time, returning home. But I still need to see more before I'm like, yes, Fran Garcia 100% over Ferland Mendy. I think Ferland Mendy's gotten so much hate now that he's like underrated by the fan base, because I think once he can get back into match rhythm, he's been injured for so long. Like, I think people discredit how difficult it is to get back into match rhythm. Once he has that and he's kind of back into full flow Mendy, like, he was unstoppable 1v1 defensively. He has his moments with his right foot in the attacking third. Like, remember we'd always joke about Mendy's right-footed shots and like stuff like that. Like, he has it in him. I just think he needs some continuity to get over these injuries. You
got hate for your player rating on Mendy. I got hate last night for not asking Carlo Ancelotti why Mendy sucks. I think you and I disagree on this slightly. And by the way, and I haven't checked today's updates, but Mendy has injury. He's injured. Well, we knew that last night, obviously, but I think it's a hamstring thing that Carlo Ancelotti. Yeah, so this is my biggest issue with Mendy, and I don't know if it's a fair criticism or unfair, but we need durable players. In Mendy's first 2 seasons, I honestly don't think I've ever in my life seen a wing back at Real Madrid defend as great as he did. Like I would trust him with my life against anyone. He would he reminded me of like Makaleli, but left back version, where no matter who tried to dribble past him, they were unsuccessful. I haven't seen that version of Mendy in a long time, and I think part of the reason is that he has a stop-start. Like the last 2 years have been stop-start. It's kind of like Bale syndrome, where he gets injured, and then when he comes back, he needs a few games to get into rhythm. But by the time those few games arrive, he gets injured again. And part of me actually feels that we're not going to see much of Mendy this season, and it's not going to be because like he's not good or just because he's not going to be available. And like I think because of that, Fran Garcia is just going to play a bunch of games. That's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong, but because we do need 2 durable left backs.
What's the feeling from the crowd on how quickly does Camavinga end up playing left back again?
The first game of the season.
I had a question. So, is it more Zidane versus Ancelotti as to why? Because I don't think it's a coincidence that since Ancelotti has been on the team, his style of play has deferred. And so I don't know if he's asking to be too much, was causing injuries. Because I felt like Zidane's formations made it more defensive for him to be in certain spots to be able to, to excel. And so it couuld be that because when he's asking, it might be too much for his body to take.
Honestly, that's a great point. I haven't even thought about that, but like Mendy's best years were under Zidane, and that's when we were squeaking out the 1-0 wins. We were playing that more pragmatic, defensive approach type of football. It wasn't that enjoyable to watch, but it worked and it was effective and it got the best out of Mendy. So I guess the only counter to that point is we did win the Champions League first season, the double under Ancelotti, and Mendy was, I thought, really important during that run. And so that's the only counterpoint, but I think it is a fair point to bring up.
Wouldn't that be a concern, though, with that now diamond formation being so narrow that you would think that the fullback position would be crucial to the development of like our play and our style, that they actually have the lane to run? But with Carvajal on one side, and then we'd have no replacement if he goes down, and then now Mendy's down, we have Fran Garcia, but that goes down.
No, this is a great. That's to me is the biggest concern about the diamond. Apart from like Vinicius having to play central, it's that like when you think back to successful diamonds in Real Madrid history, like when it was Isco, what do we have? We had Marcelo and Carvajal at his peak, and like it's hard to ask for 2 better fullbacks like going through football history. Like when those 2 at their peak are flying through, when you have Isco and Cruz, like that, what a magical era. Like just thinking about that, like it's making me feel like nostalgic, right? But that's a thing because Carlo said they want to do the formation change. But I think this is part of like, because it was reported that Carlo and the board, they want to go with a formation change next season. I think that was just Carlo's way of being like, okay, well, this is my squad. I have to make it work, and I have to like twist it to be like. But in reality, I think this is the squad he's given, right? He can't control the squad he's given, so he has to come up with solutions. I don't think it was more like Ancelotti was like, I'm going to play the diamond. These are the players I need. I think if it was really true that everyone wanted a formation change, they would have invested in a right back. Because I don't think it makes sense to play a diamond consistently and be successful with it if you have Carvajal and Lucas Vazquez. 2 players that I love. Lucas Vazquez, it's hard to criticize. The guy is an incredible servant. He's playing whatever position they ask him to. He's not even a right back. Works hard. And I think with Carvajal too, like I've never questioned his effort. Like even when he's like can't keep up, he's putting everything he can on the field. Athletically, he's just not on the same level as like the problem is almost any big team we face, their best player is often on the left wing. It's like the superstar winger, and we have to have a really strong like person who can keep up on that side. Carvajal reads the game intelligently, defensively, but he can't keep up. Like you see with Balde, right? Yeah. There was one we commented last night where he just takes a gamble and he's too tight on Balde, and he just cannot do anything to stop from Balde from blowing by him, right? Yeah. Anyways, long-winded way of saying I think you're right. The diamond limitations is like you need width from somewhere. So in that sense, I also think Fran Garcia makes more sense too.
The other thing, though, with the diamond is we got to remember it really only worked for 6 months. Yes, we had
That's also
peak
true.
Carvajal and peak Marcelo, and but it only worked we played it half a season, worked half a season, then it got scouted, and then it didn't work at all. That first half of the 2017, 2018 season was horrendous. Oh my God, Benzema only scored 3 goals. Like it didn't work. It got scouted, it got found out, and so that's where, back to your question on like long-term sustainability of this, I don't know. I'm skeptical. I'm very, very skeptical.
So people sometimes don't remember this, but like in 16-17, like that diamond was unstoppable, right? 17-18, when we won the Champions League. First of all, La Liga was a disaster that year. What was it? How many points did we lose that?
We were out by January. It was done.
In the Champions League, we won, but every single comeback or where the game changed was when Zidane made subs in the second half, brought on Bale for Isco and went to the wings. Up until that point, we struggled until like the 70th minute until Zidane made those subs. And then obviously in the final, Bale comes in and scores the bicycle kick. And I think by that point, everyone was like, okay, this is the problem with the diamond. Like, we never know where Isco is defensively. So and then all of a sudden, Modric is like trying to cover ground. Casemiro's like in the box, like not even a defensive midfielder. Ramos is like trying to score headers. And it's like chaotic. But yeah, this whole conversation, I think this is just Carlo is going to abandon this idea. I could be wrong, but like I think a few games into the season, I think we're going to see 4-3-3.
Yeah. One other thing, and then you want to take questions after this?
Sure.
One other thing I noticed last night, kind of different than what you wouldn't see with a normal TV camera angle. I was watching Alaba, and the way he plays that high line is incredible. And he really is the leader of the defense. And like there are a couple times where he caught Lewandowski off just like by this much, but he times it perfectly, and he's watching the whole time and like timing his run. And I just think like there's little kind of details that you maybe don't see, and like I think to have him back this season will be important because he was out for much of last season. So I think getting him back, hopefully fit longer, will be important.
I also was just impressed with Alba's ball progression last night. Like the way he can just drive the ball forward and make sure we have control of the ball, get it into the final third is really impressive. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm happy. Like we can take questions. I know we already kind of did questions, but if you guys have any questions, we'll take them, and we can talk about anything. It doesn't have to be about the game. It can be about history or moving forward or the man we shall not name or whoever, whatever you want. It's on the cards. We can talk about it. So if you have questions, just raise your hand. Yeah, we'll start here, just behind, and then Angela.
It's a hypothetical question.
Okay.
If you would have kept Benzema and Brighton Hustle, would that diamond work better? Sorry, say it again. If you would have kept Benzema and Brighton Hustle, would that diamond work better?
So are you saying start Joselu with Benzema?
Oh, like a 4-4-2 with Benzema and Joselu up top?
Instead of Vinny and Rodrigo, put Hustle and Benzema.
Are you sacrificing Vinny and Rodrigo then, though? I just don't think you can sacrifice Vinny at the very least. And like the way Rodrigo's been playing too, I feel like you have to find a way to get your best 11 on the field, and so those two, I'm trying to figure out a way to keep them on the field. It would be fun to test like if we're going for a game though, and like just swinging in crosses, like it would be fun to have those two in the box, getting on the end of things.
I think the question is more like a hypothetical, right?
Yeah,
like not that you would bench Vinicius and Rodrigo. But like, let's say if theoretically,
like if you didn't have Vinny and Rodrigo,
like last night, if like you have Benzema and Joselu receiving with the backs to the goal instead.
Yeah, I think it would work a lot.
Yeah.
The one thing I think that would be different, and what I noticed last night is we played very direct, and so we played a lot of balls over the top for Vinny and Rodrigo to get on the end of, and so that's not Benzema and Joselu's game. So they would be better target men, obviously, and like you could just play off them. But I think you would lose that side of it, where being able to play over the top.
We'll get a couple here, and then we'll come to your side. Angela?
Yes, I was going to ask, because honestly, it seems like, if you really think about it, it's true, we won against Milan and against United. But if you look at Ancelotti's 2 seasons, it looks like Xavi just know how to play against Ancelotti. Because we just didn't lose. It's true, we played good yesterday, and we had a good game. Well, it's another game that we lose against Barcelona. It seems like like Ancelotti's record against Barcelona in this second stint of him is awful. I think he lost like 4 games. It was 1-2. I think it is. I don't remember correctly, but it seems like Xavi just know how to win against Ancelotti. And I'm just asking if this. Obviously, we all know how the conversations go after a Clasico or Barcelona win. It's awful, honestly, but we were thinking that maybe it's something that just Xavi just know how to play against Ancelotti and just not work because we play different systems against this Barcelona. Obviously, we all remember that 4-0 and the Bernabeu that Madrid was the false nine. It's like a weird system. So my question is, maybe is Xavi? I don't know. Has the I think it's said the better of Ancelotti. I don't know. Does Xavi know Ancelotti's secrets? I don't know. Maybe it's that thing against Barcelona, against Xavi's Barcelona. That's why we don't get to see that. We lose more than we win with Ancelotti against Barcelona. That didn't happen with Zidane.
That's true. Remind me, so when Ancelotti first arrived, who was Xavi the coach? Koeman. Yeah. Because if I remember correctly, against Koeman, we won those games. When Xavi came in, I think the first one was maybe the Super Cup. We won that one, the Spanish one, and then after that, it's been kind of apart from the 4-0. Yeah, it's been. Yeah, the thing is, I know we have one Kool-Aid here. He's smiling. He's like, "Yeah, this is the best part of the podcast so far." Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't know what it is. Because there are definitely my source of frustration with Barcelona specifically is that I feel like this Barcelona team, and this sounds a little bit like a bitter Madridista talking, but it feels like this Barcelona team, you see them play in every other game, and they're not that impressive. Whether it's Arsenal 5-3, which is a preseason game, who cares? But in just the run-of-the-mill La Liga game where they're scraping by 1-0 last season, opponents are missing chances. Ter Stegen is going into God mode, or big Champions League games, and then we come up against them, and it's I feel like we treat. This is my personal feeling, and maybe it's a little bit of an emotional answer, but I feel like we treat them with too much respect sometimes. We put them on this pedestal, whereas to me, when you look at our squad on paper, we have the talent to just put the pedal on the metal to these guys, and that's why, look, when we lost the Clasico in the Copa at the Bernabeu, when we had a lot of the ball but we couldn't score, I at least enjoyed the aspect that we at least decided to not go into a deeper block. I think we should have done way better in front of goal. That needs to be said. But I do feel like we go into some of these Clásicos with a little bit too much respect for them. And I think and it's not just Barcelona, by the way. I think there are games we've seen in other big games this past season where I thought we were better than our style of football portrayed us. So the thing is, we know what Xavi's going to play. You say, Xavi knows Carlo's secrets. What secrets? It was pretty predictable in the Clásicos, up until a certain point, it was we get the ball to Vinicius on a counterattack, and everyone knew we were going to do that. At least when Rodrigo was introduced to the starting lineup last year, it got a little bit better. Vinicius had some help. Camavinga came in, even though he's not a pure left back, he helped a little bit offensively. I think those changes, those tweaks. But up until that point, everyone knew how to play against Real Madrid. So I don't even think it's too many secrets that Carlo has, that Xavi goes in. On the flip side, we know how Barca's going to play every time. We know that they're going to try to press us. We know that they're going to try to bring a higher line. We know that we can punish them behind the space that they leave behind their defensive line. So I don't know if it's so much that Xavi has figured us out. I think that we also show them too much respect sometimes. I want you to respond to this too, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that Ancelotti, everybody knows how Real Madrid's going to play. And there's not much for Xavi to change. Even last night, I found it interesting that Araujo still played right back, even though we were playing the diamond. So it wasn't a lot of times it wasn't the Araujo Vinicius duel. But I think that's almost a detriment to Ancelotti. Maybe he does need to do something a little bit different, or try some variation, even if it's through a tactical switch, in the second half or something. because maybe it is too much of the same, and he's relying on just like, oh, I've got my team, I trust my team, and this is what maybe he needs to do something a little bit different in these Clásicos just to keep it fresh, just to kind of outmaneuver Xavi, because to Angelo's point, like Xavi has gotten the better of us. But sorry to interrupt, but even last night with a new formation, a new idea, which is the diamond, where did our danger really come from? Most of it was Barca know that when Vinicius gets the ball, they have to give him the wing, and Koundé and Araujo, they come in centrally to make sure he can't cut in. And they have that down to a science, right? And that's where I think you need someone else making runs to just kind of unglue that a little bit. And I don't know if we got that enough last night. I don't know. I think about it, and I think a lot of our success last night, though, did also come from high pressing, which is different than what we've usually done.
Yeah.
That Vinny chance where he hit the crossbar after he just turned and did a one-time shot, it came from Jude Bellingham's slide tackle in the box.
Yeah.
And then the other time, Ter Stegen passed it right to Fede Valverde. That was the opportunity I forgot about.
Yeah.
Ter Stegen passed it right to Fede. He played it to Jude. Jude over-dribbled a little bit. But that was a great opportunity. When we whipped in crosses, most of it came from Tchouameni or Camavinga winning it high up the pitch. So I think more so than previous matches, I actually do think Ancelotti did something different this last night, and we did have success. The ball just didn't go in.
So I want to bring up another point in response to that, because I think that's a good point. If you look at the Barcelona scouting report, as press resistant as they are, and as much as they want to be pressed because it's their way of creating chances, if you go back throughout the years, without fail, you do man-to-man high press and just mark everyone except for Ter Stegen and dare Ter Stegen to do something with the ball. He gives it away so much, as great as he is on the ball. And anytime we've done that, they look uncomfortable. And I think because I asked Ancelotti about whether we'll press more this season with Bellingham's arrival, because Kroos and Modric, he said last season, I can't really press much because Kroos and Modric, they don't have the legs to sustain it throughout 90 minutes, right? Assuming he does want to press more, and he did press last night, I just hope that he sticks with it, and even through the growing pains of the press breaking down, because if you want a successful press, you need cohesion, and you need to do it over a long period. It needs to be ingrained so that everyone needs to be on the same page, all 11 players. And I thought last night it was good in moments, but there were moments where it was a little bit only half committed, and Barca could punish that with a long ball to Dembele over the top, or they could just carve through. And I think if we're going to create more chances with the press, that's great. But I think you need to get really good at it.
So Rodrigo managed to find the XG for this game.
How did you know? Was that telepathy?
How did you? How did you? And look, it's right there. 3.85 Real Madrid, 0.85 Barcelona.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, and that's how I felt coming away from the game. And that's why I say, yes, we've been kind of pointing all these flaws in the diamond and pointing all these issues, but it also was pretty effective and the high pressing scheme was pretty effective. So
that's actually, I didn't think it was going to be that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Would you say though, in the game, let's say I'll keep it in this one, the context of this one. It seemed like we just overcomplicated the things a little bit when Barcelona, for example, the first 20 minutes just really kept it simple, just keeping that ball rotating, passing it, even when they were getting pressed. They just made it so simple with those 5-yard passes, and they would get through. I felt like for us, it just seemed with that midfield, we would just overcomplicate the split where it should be simple. And I feel like when we go against Barcelona with Xavi just approaches it to their simple way of playing. Just keep moving that ball.
Yeah.
These guys won't sustain if there is a high press. If it was Modric and Kroos on there, they have a sense that they just know that this can't be sustainable for them. So just keep moving that ball, keep it simple, and then we'll find a run for Lewandowski or Dembele or something like that.
Right.
It just seems like we just overcomplicate an opponent that we have figured out before, but it just seems like we just do too much when it should be very simple. My way of seeing it.
Right. And I hope some of this will come with cohesion as the season goes on too. I did notice a slight improvement from game to game to game, these 3 games. Just in that little final pass. it's true that we didn't score, so that final hurdle was missing. But against Milan and Manchester United, I felt like our build-up was really fun with Bellingham and the diamond because you had a lot of good connections. But then that last pass was misplaced or something, so that improved a little bit. I don't know. Like I'm listening to that 3.85. He said it was the XG, something like that.
What did I miss?
So this is, and not to turn this negative again.
Oh yeah, 3.2 versus 0.85.
Right? Yeah. So that, like, when you look at that, you think, okay, well, that means we played well. We got unlucky. And I think that's true, but just to give this a negative light, more of like a devil's advocate, does that mean that we don't have goal scorers but we have creators? Because if you look at our Champions League successes over the years, one thing that we had in common in all of those was that we had players who could overperform their XG. So we had Benzema, Cristiano Ronaldo, Bale even, like, scoring like goals that had like 0.4 xg, or less. Is this a telling sign? And this is just one game. Is it a sign that we need someone who's just lethal in those situations that we don't have? Yeah.
The article I keep thinking about is the Kvaratskhelia one with Rodrigo. Comparison. Whenever that switch flips and Rodrigo starts scoring a little bit more consistently,
yeah,
I think we're going to see a huge change. Because, right now he's kind of been on a dry streak for a year now.
Yeah.
But he could be that guy. He really can. Thinking about that Galatasaray hat trick that he had.
Yeah.
He's got it in him. So I think whenever that changes, we're going to know a big difference.
For sure. The other one is, like, imagine if we could get like the version of Fede before the World Cup, like, consistently. Right. That would be a game changer too. Right. Yeah. We had a question here, right?
So I was going to ask, outside of the guy, we're talking. we don't normally have an issue of trying to find that nine. So I'm asking, like, if he wasn't in the picture, we would have obviously need a nine, for the year. And I was kind of, even though I'm not a big Harry Kane fan, I feel like what he can do will contribute to keeping the 4-3-3, keeping the wings, at bay.
Yeah.
So would they want to keep that pursuit, or who was your ideal nine if it wasn't for the guy?
Kane.
That's available right now.
For me, it's Kane.
Right.
I think Kane is perfect because he's like, from a profile standpoint, he's Benzema, and he's lethal. He can do the link-up stuff. I don't know if this got missed, or I don't know if enough people, in my opinion, not enough people talked about it, because last season was mostly about Erling Haaland being a machine. Harry Kane was the second best goal scorer in Europe last season. He hasn't been injured in 3 years. That concern is, he's so cute. Oh my god! But
with the bad Tottenham.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then you put Kane around other better creators. I assume he'd be perfect. So this is the biggest. Like, Bayern are trying to sign Kane. Let's do another survey.
PSG
I love the survey.
too, apparently.
They'd be smart too.
Yeah.
Like,
so here's my thing. It's like, I agree, and I like, for those of you that listened to the pod with Ruben, like, we went through like every angle of this, and like we both kind of came to the conclusion that Kane makes a lot of sense, but what I would do versus what I think the club are going to do is very different. And we were talking about the article I wrote about, like, the club not signing, I think it's 11 outfield players over their 120-year history that they have signed that are over 30 years of age. Given Kane's wages plus the salary fee plus 1 year left and he's over 30, it's just, even before, like, even when the rumors first came out, before any of the Mbappe stuff, I was very skeptical just because of all four of those things. It's just not something the club does. And so that's why, like, as much as we all think it makes sense, I just don't think the club will do it. I just don't.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick survey. Would you guys rather Mbappe next summer? This is theoretical. Or would you rather abandon it and go for Kane now? Like, okay, so Kane now, hands up.
Kane and Reece James.
That's one step at a time. Baby steps.
We got to get Reece fit, man. He gets injured.
Kane now versus Mbappe next season.
Yeah, that's the question. No,
I think Kane now is
We're
winning.
in the depths of La Liga and we're not scoring. What's going to happen? If you rely on the wings so much, they're not going to be able to go through against those middle of teams that we have to win. The shot's going to be, where's our nine? Where's Kane? And I would rather us have it now than have to go through that drought week 16, 17, and we're down 7 points to Barcelona. We shouldn't be.
We're too big to sacrifice a year.
Yeah. There's another aspect to this, in my opinion, is that if you, let's say if Mbappe doesn't come next summer, you're like, okay, fine, next year finally. There's no guarantee this guy won't change his mind again, and I don't know.
We've learned that lesson already.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I got something to say and then I got a question.
Okay.
So I generally think like as much as I love Benzema, like Kane is like a better finisher than Benzema. And as even like a playmaker, even as a playmaker, I feel like he is much more creative than Benzema is. Like with the long balls that he can give, like Rodrigo and Vinicius who run behind. Like Benzema does like the close 1-2 passes, really good dribbling and everything. That's like the kind of playmaker I see from him. But like all the long balls, like Kevin De Bruyne and all that stuff, I see like Kane doing that. And generally, I just feel like he's like a way better finisher than Benzema is. Totally not mad about like him missing all the chances through all the years. But yeah, and my question is, would you like to play like Lucas Vazquez as like right back, so he can keep up at least athletically with all the people? Because as much as I love Danny Carlo, I just cannot see him like keeping up with all the left wingers in the world right now at all. Like for example, Jack Grealish, like he could not keep up with it at all. Like, but I feel like even the problems with Lucas Vazquez, I think like he might be able to keep up with them, maybe like stop them from doing their thing just because he can run back, track them and everything. And I feel like his passes are also getting better in the attacking sense. So yeah, just like focusing on that.
That's a great question, and I think neither option is really that exciting. I don't know how to put it. Like, I think Carvajal has, earned the benefit of the doubt in that, as poor as he's been able to, apart from City last year, been able to step up in Champions League games. I thought he was pretty good against Liverpool in the final. He had it, 2 seasons ago. And then up until that point, he had some good performances up until the final. Obviously, when he went up against Mbappe, it was a nightmare. It was, and against City, it was not fun watching Grealish go at him over and over again. But I think if the plan is to play Carvajal in those games, then at least give him plenty of rest in between so that he can be fit for those games. And I think, you go back to the Super Cup last winter, where he is clearly not fit. Like, Ancelotti even confirmed it after that game. And he's playing that game. Like, just put anyone there who is at least fit. Why are you forcing the issue? And it's not like it was a Champions League final, it was a Super Cup. In moments like that, just don't play him. Like, I would have rather seen Vinicius Tobias. And I don't rate Vinicius Tobias highly. But just in that specific game, if he's like your only fit right back, or put Nacho at right back, that, apart from... That's another solution there. I think from a defensive standpoint, Nacho is still fast for his age. Defensively, he's solid. He was terrific against Mohamed Salah last season. So maybe that's an option at right back too. Yeah, Christian?
Or a line of 5, and you give a little bit more support in the back. Or Valverde ahead of Carvajal, so Valverde come back and help track and shut down Grealish.
Right, yeah. Yeah, put Valverde on the right wing, yeah. In the back?
Yeah. Take it off course slightly with this conversation, actually, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Talking a little bit about the guy that we're all referring to there. I don't want to get into too much.
I love how it takes us 10 minutes to describe this player. We could just use one word.
That guy. But going into that and kind of away from the tactical a little bit, leadership-wise, I'll ask a couple of people about this earlier, but how do you guys feel about what this looks like if we do get another striker in that, let's say it's Mbappe, right? In a year from now, ideally, because I don't want to pay PSG any money. But who do you see in the dressing room and from the coaching side? If someone suggested Zidane would be fantastic as a match with Mbappe, but if it's not Zidane, from the coaching side and from the dressing room side of things, leadership-wise, what do you think that does for the locker room? Having Mbappe there, and the personalities and given that no one seems to be able to do it, and then which coach would be able to do this? Because obviously, so for coaching and dressing room,
I think we have to recognize the leaders we have now, and I sometimes they're not necessarily like the best players on the field, and so like Carvajal, for instance, like say what you will about him, he is a leader, and he is a guy that's going to be vocal. I think Alaba is one of those guys. I think Courtois is one of those guys. I think they're the ones that are now going to take that mantle now that obviously Kroos and Modric are still there, but once they leave, like I think those are the guys that are going to have to start taking the mantle as we've lost some of that presence from losing Ramos, losing Casemiro, losing Benzema. Yeah, even Lucas. Yeah, I mean these guys are now the older heads on the team and kind of some of the more vocal leaders that we've seen. And sometimes that's not necessarily the most impactful player on the field. What I think you have to be careful of when you sign a guy like Mbappe, and is like, okay, let's say it's a heated game. Let's say it's like a game where we're not playing that well, and you get to halftime, and Mbappe's pissed off, and he's in the locker room, like he's trying to do everything on his own, and that's where it's those guys are going to have to step up. And even though, hey, I'm Carvajal, but I'm nowhere near the player Mbappe is, and he's really carrying the team right now, how do I handle that dynamic in the locker room? I think that's where it's going to be, that's where you might have more challenges.
With a very erratic Vinicius.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's one of those things that, first of all, like you have to put yourself in the best position to win, I think. And with regards to leadership, I know it's kind of like an intangible thing, right? We kind of know who the spiritual leaders of the team like are. But there's leadership, and then there's just the ability to put the team on your back and give confidence to your team. Like, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo was that kind of leader to me. Whereas, like, yeah, he had his moments where he pouted, he was frustrated, he got mad at his teammates, but there's no one else you want to lead you in battle in the Champions League final more than him. The guy would just show up over and over again. Like, I've seen enough from Mbappe to think that he has that in him. That World Cup final was one of the greatest performances I've seen from a player, and like with the stakes that high. Different. I think there's different kinds of leadership we're trying to distinguish here, I guess. I think we have the spiritual leaders in Modric and Carvajal, and whoever else you want to put, like the names you mentioned. You need players who can just get the job done. And I don't know, like there's a lot of people who are questioning, like, okay, is this guy good for the locker room? What is the dynamic going to be? What's the team unity? Because we've had such great team unity in the last couple of years. I don't know. That remains to be seen. We know that Mbappe's friends with like half of our team. You know, I don't know what that means like a year or two from now when you see the same people every day in the same game. Maybe the relationship changes. I don't know. But I don't know if it's going to be a huge problem in that aspect until we see it. I don't know. Humayun.
I'm not going to talk about that guy, but my own personal opinion, I'm just going to share a comment. Is that I've been a fan of Ancelotti for a long time. He is by far the coolest coach ever. Not cool in the sense of he's a cool guy. He's very calm under pressure.
Right.
I mean, the 2014 Champions League final against Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sitting there tearing my hair out. You know, what the fuck is going on? This guy was like standing around, looking right. I mean, the guy is just a masterful tactician. He's a great coach. And I know that there's talks about him going to coach Brazil and everything. And I think personally, and I don't know a lot. I mean, I'm a Madrid fan, but I don't follow them as my primary team. But I think the hierarchy of Madrid should do everything they can to hold on to this one. I mean, extending I know, I mean, if you signed a contract, you have to do it. And here's why. Earlier in the podcast, you guys were talking about a lot of specifics about players. Vinicius Jr, you know, Mbappe is going to come in. If this guy do it, a lot of this could be a moot point if a new coach comes in. And we don't know what happens when a new coach comes in, because he will have his own style. He wants his own players, depending on what country he's from. You know, typically coaches that come in want to bring in players from that country, and the whole dynamic of the team changes. So, to me, Ancelotti coming back a second time to Madrid, I mean, he doesn't need to prove his work. Everyone knows what he's doing. But I'm thinking, who are they going to bring in if this guy walks off? And, you know, there's always a way to make someone come back. So, I would see, I think losing him as a coach would not be in the best interest of Madrid in the long term. Doesn't matter who you bring in on the field. Because, again, managing a team as big as Madrid, they are the biggest, one of the biggest clubs in the world, undoubtedly. But this guy is just, to me, he's like the god of coaching. I'm just curious as to what you guys think, once he walks into the sunset and the replacement comes. Because who's going to replace him? Who's going to be that guy?
I mean, you look at Real Madrid history, and he's one of the most successful coaches in Real Madrid history. I know a lot of people, there's a big debate at the end of the season, like, do we keep Ancelotti or do we get something new, fresh? I was a proponent of, let's see what a third Ancelotti season looks like. We've never seen it. So let's just see what it looks like, at least. I think he's done enough over the last 2 years. The body of work is there. He's won every trophy you can win. I think enough is there to give him this third season. And to your point, let's say we have a tremendous season. We run away with La Liga. Maybe we don't win the Champions League because that's so difficult to do. But maybe you get to the semifinals and you go bow out valiantly, and you have a great Copa del Rey run. Maybe we win the Copa del Rey as well. I think Ancelotti earns a renewal in that instance. And I don't think it would be hard to get him to do a U-turn. He's all the time talking about how much he loves Madrid, how much he loves coaching this team. He is a Madridista at heart, and so that's what you want in your coach. And I know a lot of people feel strongly on the Ancelotti issue, but I personally like him, and I think if the body of work is there and he's done enough to earn it, then yeah, I'm all for another continuing to this extension with Ancelotti.
I also think, based on that point, I think it's an important point to bring up. Also because if you give any other coach this, what's happening this summer, no striker, you lost Benzema, and asking them to make it work, I think it's going to be challenging for anyone. So he's trying to reinvent the wheel. He's like, okay, I don't have a starting striker. I only have Joselu. Maybe he's not like a Real Madrid caliber striker. I need to reinvent the wheel. If you go back, this guy deserves a lot of credit in the bank, because if you go back to after he won La Decima, Xabi Alonso left us with how many days left in the transfer window. We didn't get a proper replacement for him. No defensive midfielder. He has to reinvent the wheel again. The year before, he reinvented the wheel, putting Di Maria in the central midfield. And he's constantly the guy this is the squad, you make it work, and if it doesn't work, it's your fault. And if it works, well, we all win, right? And so this is the situation he's in this summer. They're telling him, if we get Mbappe, you can have him. If we don't, and if we don't, there's no replacement. There is no plan B. This is reality. And I think that's going to be tough for any coach to, and I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt for that reason.
That's my point. If I can just add this, that's my point. That I can't see anyone else out there. With all due respect to all the other coaches in any league, I don't think there's anyone who can step up to the level of Ancelotti and come in. Even if they bring in Mbappe, even if they bring him in, I don't think any coach can come in and do the job that this guy is doing. So I'm just, like I said, I'm a big fan of him. In the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, I think there's no other coach that's good enough. The Madrid standards, everybody's standards are here, Madrid's are here. Everyone knows how, when one game doesn't work, changes have to be made. That's how expectations are. So for me, this guy is it.
The other positive with Ancelotti is he's starting to recognize Kiyan now. So last night I think he only the only person who got a question in was Kiyan, and he recognized it. He went over to him. So I think he finally understands. He's oh, this guy asks tactical questions.
I just want to make one more point, Marcos. Before I also think all that stuff is true. I personally believe that there are definitely games where I think we could use some more complex tactical ideas. But I also think that, from Real Madrid is unique in the sense that we have especially in recent history, but we have a lot of coaches who understand that it's not just about tactics here. And I know Eduardo Alvarez is very passionate about this. He's you guys, when you start talking about tactical coaches, just stop. We are not Barca. He's an extreme case of very opinionated about that. We need players who understand what Real Madrid is. We need players who can manage the locker room. We need players who understand our ethos, and that's it. And so, but I think there is a medium in between, and that's why. And I've said this many times, so this is very repetitive. But a Xabi Alonso really intrigues me, and I'm going to be watching a lot of Bayer Leverkusen this year because it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be you're a tactician. It doesn't have to be you're a man manager. Like you get somebody like a Xabi Alonso who has like more complex tactical ideas, but is a Madridista as well, like who commands the respect of a locker room. That person like that intrigues me. I don't know how long Carlo will stay, but I do, and this hasn't been talked about enough, I don't think. This whole Brazil thing, it's not official. Like, it seemed, for some reason it was planted in our brain that it's official because the Brazilian Federation guys said it. But, like, Roberto Carlos came out and said that, and this is, Roberto Carlos is not some random ex-footballer. He's with Carlo Ancelotti every single day. They're, like, hanging out at training sessions. He works with the club. He's like, Carlo would never sign a contract with Brazil. That would be unprofessional. I don't think he's done it. Like, what? So, I don't even, like, and I agree with you. The only way Carlo Ancelotti actually leaves is if you pry it away from him. This is his dream. Like, he'll stay until he retires, basically, right? Yeah. We got Marcos and then Mario, and then we'll come here, okay?
So I was there when Eduardo dropped that speech on that Zoom call, and it was, like, chilling, like, about what style? What are you guys talking about?
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
Iconic segment.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
All right, so it's basically 2 questions, but I would say, isn't Jude Bellingham's best role more of an 8 than a 10? More of like a deeper role? And then have we really figured out the center back pairing?
Both good questions. I think what you really like about Jude Bellingham in this number 10 role is he has a little bit more freedom, and you're not shackling him with defensive responsibilities, and he can still do that work, but just do it higher up the field, which I like. But yeah, I mean, Jude Bellingham, when he first went to Dortmund, he was a number 6. He was playing defensive mid, and he gradually moved his way up the pitch. But so yeah, he is an all-rounder midfielder. You could put him anywhere. I think he'll perform for you either way. So I don't know if it's one over the other. The center back pairing, I think that's a good question. Like, Rudiger's looks fantastic in preseason. He played that ball over the top to Bellingham. I was really surprised he didn't get any minutes last night. Yeah. Obviously, we know how well Militao and Alaba play together. When we went to the training session on Friday, I was really impressed watching Militao live and in person, because like anytime they did crossing drills or anything technique-wise, like he's so good for a big man, for a center back. Oh my god! And so, but I do think it's a fair question. Like, we have 3 phenomenal center backs that are just going to be competing day in and day out.
4, Nacho.
4 too. Yeah. Can't discredit the captain.
We're just interest of time. Just move at a quicker pace with these last few questions, because we want to finish recording before the bar opens up, and we got prizes to give away. So we're going to go Mario.
So following on to the coaching question earlier, there are a lot of people that are looking at this team this season and have real concerns about goal scoring, and it's easy to see a scenario where unfortunately we're not able to get it done. He who shall not be mentioned does not come this season. And so then Ancelotti has a soft place to land with the Brazilian Federation. And then it leaves us in an open question. Do we go internally with sort of a Madridistas style candidate, so like Xabi Alonso or Raul? Or do we look outside for someone who's considered to be a student of the game, a more modern practitioner of the game? Tuchel was taken off, I think specifically Tuchel was taken off the table by Bayern to prevent him potentially coming to Madrid. Leaves Nagelsmann out there. Has Raul's star fallen because Castilla's inability to move up to the Segunda? Has Xabi Alonso moved ahead of him in the pecking order as the potential successor to Ancelotti? And is that just the reflexive, comfortable place for Florentino Perez to go internally for a former star, former legend who also has some coaching ability? Or are they going to take the jump and look for somebody who has that real tactical ability? So that's my question.
I don't know what the club will do necessarily, but I do think that based on the success of both Zidane and Carlo Ancelotti, I think the club will look at that and be like, well, it's nice to have someone who understands us, and it's kind of from within the family, if that makes sense.
Or Zidane.
It's possible. Like, you can never rule out Zidane coming back. Like, it's like, he's always there just to come save the day, I feel like, if we need him. But I think Raul's stock has fallen a little bit for sure. partly because of Castilla's. I don't know if like failure is the right word because.
Is it fair?
Almost.
I don't.
Well,
Personally, for me, I don't think it's fair. I think he's done a tremendous job with Castilla.
Like the reality is, he's got. Even though we didn't get to Segunda, he got us like farther than most managers. Even like Castilla just never makes Segunda. Essentially, it's very rare when it happens. And he came like that last game, that playoff game. The ref was against us. We missed a glorious chance at the end that would have taken us to Segunda.
Allow them to score.
Yeah, so while I think there are definitely complaints about Raul, I think, in my opinion, Raul is a better Castilla manager than Zidane was at that time specifically.
Much better. So
just at that juncture of their coaching careers, Raul is better than Zidane. But obviously Zidane is Zidane. He's one of the GOATs now. Like, we know that now, but at the time. So it's hard to evaluate, I think, the jump from Castilla to the A team, how that'll translate. Raul can improve, like he's young. But I do think, to your question, I think his stock is lower than Xabi Alonso, I think. And also, like with Tuchel, you brought up Tuchel. I love Tuchel. I think he's a genius. I was terrified every time we had to play against Tuchel. He just would come up with something that we couldn't figure out, or he would figure us out. Like, we would dominate first leg, and then he'd be like, okay. Second leg, like Chelsea 3-0 goal, they go up in the Bernabeu, right? The adjustments he made. He's a genius, but I did question, is this guy's the way, can he actually manage this locker room? Yeah, and I was skeptical of that point. So one sec, we're going to go here, and then we'll go to Logan. Okay, so, and then over here. Okay, let's go. Okay, look, guys, if we can keep these last questions to like 20 seconds or less, okay? In the back, yeah. Yeah, you.
So last night on the field, at one time, we had Rodrigo, Vini, Garcia, Tchouameni. So all the players, especially in the midfield, they're all about 25 and younger. And I think we kind of harped on the leadership portion. But do you think this season we'll pick a player based on just merit alone, or do you think we'll need to play close or Madrid just to have some sort of leadership there in the middle?
I think it'll come down to, initially, I think Carlo wants to continue this transition. He's talked about it quite a bit, and I think he wants to be the coach that helps shepherd in these young players, and he's already started it, and I think he wants to fully transition. What I think will be interesting is when push comes to shove, results start not coming around, and Kroos and Modric come in to save the day. Well, then what happens? Is he going to continue to go back to the default, and they're going to be playing game in and game out when push comes to shove? Like, remember we saw Zidane? Zidane was famed for being a rotational coach. Well, his last season at the club, he didn't rotate at all. And because when results started going on the line, he trusted his guys, and he did not rotate at all from like November forward. So I think when coaches get pushed to like their backs are against the walls, that's when you see the true colors come out.
True colors. Ancelotti also, like, historically, like, it's very, very common for him to like start the season one way, and then like 5 months in, it's a completely different lineup. Like, you know, so we'll see. I think he'll change. We'll go here next.
So talking about like the financial side of the club, you forget the guys. Or is the club going to be able to sustain paying like a transfer fee without selling one of our midfielders? I feel like one person's going to have to go ahead. Yeah. I'm hearing like a lot of rumors about either Verde or Tchouameni.
Yeah.
So the club's going to be paying for a transfer fee.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So the question, if you couldn't hear it, was if we pay a transfer fee Mbappe this summer, do we end up having to sell a midfielder? And like historically, we've seen that to be true. Every single time we sign a big player, like normally the club sells somebody on. We do have 7 midfielders for theoretically 6 spots. So my opinion, like whenever you look at the budget, Real Madrid actually puts together their annual statements and puts it out every year. They always budget for a sale, a big sale. And so this year, I think what saved us, this year what we may be able to get away with is the fact that we got rid of so many big wages. Hazard's gone, Benzema's gone, Asensio, if even Odriozola's on decent wages, so if he goes, like Mariano, so you got rid of a ton of wage space. So I think from that perspective, like if they get a long enough contract, like Jude, I think is on a 6-year deal. If you get Mbappe on a 6-year deal, you amortize that, and so it's easier on your books. And because we got rid of those wages, I think it helps us. So we might not have to this summer, but I would still be in the back of my mind if we sign Mbappe for 200-something million. Like I would get prepared for the rumors of Tchouameni, Valverde, 70 to 100 million sales. Like I would not be surprised.
Theoretically, next summer you lose Bruce Waters' contract.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah, you can never rule that out. Yeah.
Managing Madrid Podcast 2030. Cruising mode. Okay. We got like 3 left, I think. Yeah.
So, for me, the discussion about how Xavi might have Ancelotti's number, it kind of brought back Ancelotti's first stint with the club where we were so bad against Atletico. Somehow we'll play so well and we'll end up losing or drawing to Atletico. So, and I feel the place in a Barca right now is very similar to that. They play very defensive, a deep block, throw bodies behind the ball every time we attack and all that. So, my question is, while I'm cautiously optimistic about how the 4-4-2 has been in our 3 games, I don't really think Man United or Milan or the current Barca is the standard which we should be comparing Madrid to. Do you guys think that, let's say we come up against a Man City or a Bayern with the same formation, do you think we will win? Like the same way we played the past week.
I agree with you that we should not be measuring ourselves in these games in particular. This is also like a very Barca thing. Like, sorry, but like this is the thing with Barca. Like I always like tell Diego, it's like you guys measure everything in Clásicos, and it's just, and I don't want us to be that way either. But I
tell them about the social media too.
Oh yeah, so yesterday it was a funny story. Like, so Matt and I were sitting
right behind the Barcelona social media team in the press box.
Yeah, so it was the same one from last year, by the way. I reckon, but actually might have been different. I don't know. Anyway, so last year during the Clasico in Vegas, when Rafinha scored, there was a journalist next to me, Barca journalist, losing his mind. And I looked up at him and I was like, and then later on I was like, so you work for Barca? He's like, no, but I cover Barcelona. I was like, oh, I just noticed that you were very excited for a friendly goal. And then he goes, and he says, no, there's no such thing as friendly Clasico. No. And last night, they were celebrating in front of us. And the staff came over and they were like, hey guys, it's a press box. No celebrating, please. Like, it was just funny. Because it was like I predicted it was going to happen.
He told me before that.
I was like, just get ready if they score. But to your second part of your question, like I don't think we're on City's level. No, I don't. Not with this as currently constructed. In my opinion, no.
I have one more question. What do you think would ideally be Brahim's and Ceballos' role this season? Ceballos I still think can contribute to the team. I love him as a player, I love how much he seems to love the club. But Brahim, I'm very, very concerned that it would turn out to be another Mariano / Hazard. What do you guys think?
I think Brahim's going to contribute more than Hazard and Mariano. I think he's like this is the point I've made a few times, is that like when you look at the players we lost this summer, Hazard, Mariano, Vallejo, soon to be Odriozola, these guys were not real depth. The players we have now are real depth players who can actually contribute. I think Brahim will contribute. I don't think he's a starter, but I think he's someone who can come in and help break lines off the bench.
I agree.
Yeah. Where are we now? All the way back?
Yeah,
okay.
Quick
Yeah.
question. What do you think of Militao starting the right back and creating the back three possession and then allowing whoever the left back is to attack more freely?
I don't hate it. I thought Militao was pretty good with Brazil at right back. I think he's like something he can also do really well at that position is hit that long diagonal ball from that position. I don't hate it. I also just think this is like the state of our situation. Like these questions, like should we play Militao? Like a lot of Fede Valverde discussion, like not here, but like in general. So like our options aren't great, but I don't hate it. Like I think it's an option. I don't think it's a regular option, but in a pickle, yeah.
In the diamond with Vinny and Rodrigo up top, Vinny in particular, do you think he's trying too hard to play out of his comfort zone, or like Benzema would play it? Because the few moments when Ozone came in, towards the end of the game, he started taking it left and was really taking advantage of Serginho depth. And those are some of his better chances coming in from the left.
Yeah.
Do you think if he plays more to his natural style, that diamond could work a little bit better with Vinny?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to be, like, to Kiyan's point earlier, I think the diamond, what we've seen, it's been a little bit rigid, and I think we need to see it be a little bit more fluid. And I noticed even before Jose Lu came in that Vinicius started just going wide. Like, I think Carlo just said, hey, you're not, like, he wasn't as involved as we want him to be. And I think he said, go ahead and start drifting out wide. My only concern with that, again, is, like, we don't have a focal point. And then, Vinicius beats 3 guys, but there's nobody in the box. So that's the only concern. But I do think, if we're going to stick with this, I think there needs to be a little bit more fluidity. And then maybe it is like Jude or Fede who have to just sit in as a central focal point for the time being. Like, players are going to have to rotate.
Yeah, I also think with Vinny is that, like, to his credit, he is trying to adapt. Like, he's not being stubborn about it. He's trying to adapt. And Ancelotti said, like, it's going to be harder for him to adapt than it is Rodrigo. Rodrigo is more used to playing that central role, so he's trying. Ultimately, I think you have to cater your strengths to your best players. And I think Vinicius is our best player. So I think ultimately you have to find a solution where he's happy too. And we'll see how far that goes. Guys, we're going to give away prizes now. So I'm going to turn off the recording. Can you guys just make some noise, tell everyone at home, like, give them some FOMO, how much they missed out here? Do you guys have fun? Hala Madrid. All right, guys, at home, listening, watching, the rest is only for the people who are here in the room. See you later. Peace out. All right, thanks for listening, guys. Before we wrap it up, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid who do so much to support the show. We thank you guys all for being part of the Real Madrid family and growing with us. It's been an honor, absolute pleasure, and we hope to continue growing this thing. Shout out to our $10 plus patrons specifically because if you pledge $10 or more, you get a specific shout out on the podcast, in addition to getting guaranteed responses to your questions and getting access, of course, to all the content we do. So shout out to these $10 plus patrons: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Pairing, Wamik Jamal, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Somanshu Singh, Sheikh Hatiri, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuel Justin, Samer Z, Sai Mohan, Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafati, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Masariego, Naveen Babu Ramesh Babu, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Osorio, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jeff Soa, Jason Fitz, Jacob P, Ian Marley, HM, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sosman, Daniel Williams, Connor McMorrow, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Arnab Mukherjee, Armand Gashi, Armando L, Anthony Tharp, Andres Silvestre, Ananya Kumar, Alex Steiberg, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Maghrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. Absolute legends. Thank you guys so much, and Hala Mari.